All right. Welcome to another podcast of Reviving the American Family. I'm Zach.
I'm April.
And today we are going to go over why are the homes so dang expensive?
Why are they so high?
They're very high. So we're going to talk about that. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, they're, Zach, they're the same as they were 50
No,
years ago.
They're not.
It's all relative. Wrong. So if you look at the cost of a home versus the average household income and what the ratio of that is. So in 1920s, it was about 2 times. The average cost of a home was about 2 times the average total household income.
And a lot of them, you had one income.
Yeah. So if you're talking to some great grandpa and he's like, well, back in my day, we could, things have changed a little bit. If you look at the 1950s, it was 3 times. So their kids, that would probably be more like my grandparents were buying homes. They were starting to buy homes around that time, maybe a little bit before. 1985, that's when my parents were probably a little bit before that, bought their first home. And it was 3.5 times the average household income. And then we come to today, and it's about 5.1 times the average household income. So that becomes much more difficult for people to actually be able to purchase a home. Now we're talking about average homes, not starter homes. So that was an average home versus the average household income of those times that I mentioned. But it's even harder, and we'll go over it with those new starter homes. How they're not starter homes anymore. So it is becoming more and more difficult. And a lot of people are saying, well, why is this happening? Is it what is going on here? So there's multiple reasons, but I wanted to take you through it just so you understand what you're up against, and how you'll have to figure out a good plan and how to combat that. But for us, it was buying homes that were had to have some work done to it. They weren't brand new homes.
We always bought homes with sweat equity in them.
Yeah.
You can always get a better deal, and you can fix it as you go.
Yeah. Well, we've owned 3 homes. I would say one, the one in Kansas City, our Olathe home, that one was pretty much ready to go.
We did very little to that.
Yeah, and we did well on that. So we got lucky there. But our first 2 homes, we had to, our first home, we had to put a lot of sweat equity in. And then our home that we live in now, we had to also.
Yes.
So there are some ways around that. It takes a lot of hard work and patience, but we'll just have to do what we can do until the market changes. So one of the reasons why there's been a pretty severe housing shortage more recently, and actually with the 2008 financial crisis, that's when that started. So if you remember, there was tons of homes being built.
Yeah, I remember when we were first got married, there were tons of neighborhoods popping up.
Early 2000s, in the 90s, early 2000s. I mean, the people building homes, they were making a killing. There was a lot of people purchasing homes. The market was doing really well until it wasn't, and then it crashed. And a lot of the home builders left the market. They got hurt really bad, and they just haven't been back.
Yeah, I think they were sitting on a lot of the inventory that they had built, and they couldn't sell it for what they built it for,
and it crushed them.
Yeah.
So there's been a severe housing shortage. Number 2, we got a higher buyer market. Or buyer demand, I should say. Millennials are entering their peak buying years,
which is kind of late.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of. Well, you got to remember, you're a millennial, but you're kind of a older millennial.
Okay.
You got some millennials that are just around 30, and those.
Well, we bought our first house when you were 25.
Well, yeah, but I would say that's not average.
Not typical.
That's not average. It's not typical.
Okay.
So I would say that would be reason number 2 that we have going on right now. Number 3, we got higher mortgage rates. And what that means is people like us, we bought this house 6 years ago when the mortgage rates were low. So if we sold our house and tried to buy a mortgage that was similar, we'd have to pay a couple $100 more because we're not getting a 3% rate on our mortgage. We're going to get a 6%. It's double.
Yeah, but the houses are a lot more expensive too. Like I think it's a bit of both though. Maybe
Well,
you'll get into that.
it's
Keep
all of
going.
this. All these things that we're talking about. This is all affecting the housing market. It's a little bit of multiple reasons. You got rising costs in construction. We saw if you were thinking about building a house like around 2018, 2019, and then you started to build right in 2020 when COVID hit, you got screwed because you thought the product was going to be X and then it like doubled. If you remember, we had things coming over from different countries, from China and all these other places, and they were sitting at the ports. They wouldn't even let them in.
Yeah.
And the demand was there and there was no product to be able to, so the cost went sky high. I've got a couple buddies that built houses during that time, and it increased. It didn't double their cost, but it increased at like 30 to 35%, which is
That's a big
increase.
jump. That's not a little jump.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about mortgages and, okay, this is how much I make each month. This is how much I can spend. And a lot of people, if there's a place to stretch yourself out, a lot of people tend to stretch themselves out with real estate because you can, it's an investment and you can make it back. But when you stretch yourself out and then you figure out later you're even more stretched than what you thought by 30%, that
makes you to rethink it.
That's brutal. Yeah. And then, so that was then. And then also, just to be honest, for our conservatives, the tariffs, that's going to increase costs.
I worried about that when he said the tariffs, because I'm like, yeah, sure, you're tariffing these things, but you're not replacing it with industry here.
Yeah.
So, and that would be the point in my mind, that's the point of tariffs.
Well, he's trying to replace it here, but that's going to take time.
That's going to take time. We don't have the infrastructure anymore.
Yeah. It's going to take time, and hopefully it does. But even that being said, our products, there's a reason why we're buying products over in other places, because they cost a lot less when they can use that cheap labor, slave labor pretty much in China, then it's going to cost a lot less when we have to build it and we're paying someone $20, $30, $40 an hour.
Well, I can relate to that because I make dresses, and there's been people, they'll ask me, oh, can you make me a dress? And I'm like, I usually always say no, because when I give them my price, it usually offends them. Because they're used to paying slave labor for these prices. Like for me, it costs me money to go get the dress. It costs me time, and it costs me the effort that I put into this.
You're hand stitching or sewing everything when they've got giant machines.
I'm going to require you to pay me more than 3 cents an hour.
Yeah.
So when I tell people my price, they typically like I said, they get offended. Right. And that's what we're used to in this country. We are used to paying slave labor.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate, but it's part of it, and we have to recognize what's causing the increases. Well, if you put a 30% tariff on Canada or whatever, and they're bringing in the lumber, then that can be a problem. That's going to cause an increase. Just general inflation, that would be another reason. That's something we're used to. That wouldn't be like, hey, this is the biggest issue, but general inflation is going to cause it to go up. And then, investors' activities, like we just did a podcast on private equity firms.
Go watch that one if you haven't.
Yeah.
Very important information you need to know.
And they own about 3% of the housing market. And what do? They take it out of the owners. They don't sell, they rent. Yeah. And they rent. So they take those homes out
of the market.
And that means less homes for people like us to buy.
And you think 3%, you're like, oh, that's barely anything. 3% of all the homes in the U.S., that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that's something you need to keep in mind as well. When you see a bunch of rental properties out on the market, that takes that rental property out of your hand. That takes that property out of your hand to own.
Yeah.
So.
And then the starter homes, the starter homes are still there, but their prices are, $250,000 for a lot of people that are wanting to start a home. Our incomes just haven't went up. If you're making probably around $50,000 out of college, you're doing pretty well. And you're doing probably about the same as someone that works maybe in a production plant. So those starter homes are becoming harder and harder to really be considered starter homes, even though they're probably the size that you would want in a starter home. Because you're not spending, you're spending 4 or 5 times your annual income, and that's harder. That's
Yeah.
much tougher.
Yeah.
And then the big thing that we've seen lately, now it's been stopped by the Trump administration, but immigration pulled in
Lot
during
of
the
people.
Biden years, where it depends on what number you want to look at, but 7 to probably 10, 11 million is kind of the estimates that you'll find out there. Some other people on the more extreme side will say it's a lot more than that, but either way, it's a lot,
It's more than we can absorb.
and it doesn't help our housing situation as far as cost. And who this is going to hurt the most are people that are first coming in to buying their first home.
Which
Because
should be
we-
Gen Z at this point.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it should be Gen Z, the older Gen Zs that should be buying these homes to start their families. Because in my opinion, you should be starting, your young ladies should be looking to find their husband in their 20s. And men in maybe mid 20s should be looking to getting married. And that's when you should be looking to buy a home, when you first get married, so you can start a family. That's how they did it in decades before us.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I think that's right. That's been the process that we followed. We were in apartments for about a year until we bought our first home. So
yeah.
that seemed to work out. So I would say, for you guys that are coming into the market, because it's going to affect you the most. Because we started off maybe, 20 years ago, it was 3.5, maybe 4 times the average income. But we've been able to build equity, sell our house, get money out of it, put it into a new house. So all that stuff kind of helps. But when you're first into the market, that's going to be your hardest time to get your
Yeah.
toes wet and get into it. And but I think number one, make sure you get a good job that can help purchase these and be able to get the right salary to buy
Yeah.
that what you need.
Yeah, if you're going to college, make sure you're going for the right degree. Make sure that degree is going to give you that good return on investment.
Yeah.
And that's very few degrees anymore.
Yeah.
As far
What you
as
don't-
the
what-
price of college.
Yeah, what you don't want is a $500, school loan on top of everything else that we just talked about that's going to make your housing loan that much bigger.
Yeah. Because
So-
cars are even more expensive now than what they were back in the day. So, you got to think about a car payment if you're going to own a car.
Yep. All right. Well, that's been us wanting to kind of go over what's going on with the homes right now and why they're so expensive. I think it's important for you guys to understand what is going on when administration makes changes. Obviously, lowering interest rates is a big thing. Trying to bring things back in-house so we don't get the tariffs, but that's going to take some time. Right now, I would say we're seeing some negative effects to that.
Yeah.
Although the cost of things are going down because of competition, but I think we won't see the benefit of that probably for years to come. It takes a long time to build plants. If you're saying, this country committed to build or put X amount of dollars into our market, well, those giant plants that they're saying they're going to bring to the United States, they don't get built overnight.
Right.
It takes more than a year for most of them to get built.
Yeah.
So it's years and years where we'll see that actually happening.
Yeah.
And then making sure that, the best that you can do is to make sure that you're choosing the right job to provide for your family. So we want to revive the American family, make sure we're voting people in that help that out. Some of the other nonsense that it seems like we've talked about for years and years now, the woke stuff or whatever the case might be, that shouldn't be your main focus. You need to be able to survive. You need to be able to own your own home, buy your own food, vote for the guy that does that the best. And that will help out the most. So this is another episode of Reviving the American Family. Remember to like, subscribe, share, do all those things so we can push out the information to the rest of the world.
We've got a lot of great content coming.
Yes.
We're going to be talking to more veterans too. That's something I'm really excited to. Well, you're probably going to be talking to more veterans than me, but
Absolutely.
something I'm excited for.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.